Project Riese was a secret Nazi construction launched in 1943 in the Aal Mountains and at Wewelsburg Castle in Lower Silesia, then part of Germany and now Poland. It consisted of 7 vast underground complexes, none of which were completed. The plan was to link the tunnels into a single network, but the project stalled as the war turned against Germany. The real purpose remains unclear. Theories suggest it was meant to be a new Führer Headquarters, an underground city, weapons lab, or a network of factories for the arms industry. Some link it to Nazi treasure legends, including the missing gold train and the lost amber room, both rumored to have been hidden within the tunnels. Others connected to secret weapon programs such as the Nazi Bell. Construction relied on forced labor under horrific conditions, with an average life expectancy of only 4 months and many dying from malnutrition or typhus. The project was later handed to Organisation Todt under Albert Speer. Hitler demanded rapid progress, but Speer noted the enormous drain on resources like steel and concrete at a time when Germany desperately needed both. As Soviet forces advanced, the SS abandoned the sites, booby-trapping tunnels and sealing or destroying sections. The fate of the remaining prisoners is unknown. Many were probably entombed. Some tunnels were later found flooded and much of the complex remains inaccessible or undiscovered. Peenemünde Research Center, built on Usedom Island in the Baltic Sea, was the birthplace of the V-1 flying bomb and the V-2 rocket, the world's first ballistic missile. Work began in 1937 under Wernher von Braun, with projects ranging from long-range missiles aimed at the United States to experimental underwater rockets. The site was heavily camouflaged and contained underground test facilities. In August 1943, British raids under Operation Crossbow devastated parts of the complex, forcing much of the production to be relocated. The last V-2 launch from Peenemünde occurred in February 1945. By May, Soviet forces captured the island, finding most of the site in ruins after German demolition. As the war ended, over 450 German rocket scientists were taken by the US Army, including von Braun and Walter Dornberger. Through Operation Paperclip, many were moved to the United States where they continued missile and space research. The Dora-Mittelbau tunnels, built beneath the Dora-Mittelbau concentration camp in 1943, housed Mittelwerk, a secret underground weapons factory hidden in the Stein mountain. After Allied bombings crippled rocket facilities at Peenemünde, Nazi leadership moved production underground to protect it from air raids. Forced laborers from occupied Europe were used in brutal 14-hour shifts. Conditions were so harsh that about 1 in 3 of the 60,000 prisoners sent there perished. The Mittelwerk produced the V-1 and V-2 rockets later launched at London in September 1944. When US troops arrived near the site in April 1945, they discovered the hidden complex. The Führerbunker was an air raid shelter beneath the Reichschancellery in Berlin. Covering about 5,000 square meters, it was the final Führer headquarters and served as both Hitler's refuge and the central nerve center of the Nazi regime in the last months of the war. Located 11 meters underground, it was heavily fortified with steel-reinforced concrete floors over 8 feet thick and a 9-foot ceiling. The complex included kitchens, storage, an air purification system, and a power plant driven by U-boat diesel engines. Security was tight, with 3 checkpoints leading to Hitler's quarters. Hitler moved in on January 16, 1945, directing the collapsing war effort from within the bunker. On April 29th, he married Eva Braun, and less than 2 days later, both took their lives in the bunker. After the war, the chancellery was demolished by the Soviets, and the Führerbunker was later unearthed and destroyed during Berlin's reconstruction in the late 1980s. Wewelsburg Castle in North Rhine-Westphalia was taken over by the SS in 1934 under Heinrich Himmler, who wanted to transform it into the ideological center of the SS. He chose the site for its proximity to the Teutoburg forest, where Germanic tribes beat the Romans decisively, a past the SS wanted to claim. The Renaissance fortress was to become a leadership school for training SS officers in racial doctrine, mysticism, and Germanic mythology. The site was strictly controlled, with visits and publications about the castle forbidden without Himmler's approval. The castle housed SS oath ceremonies and marriage consecrations, and Himmler ordered the death's head rings of fallen SS men to be stored there as symbols of eternal membership. After 1941, there were plans to enlarge it to be the center of the world, with a big 18-meter tall wall in front of it centered on the North Tower, which contained symbolic rooms like the crypt and the Obergruppenführersaal, decorated with a black sun and hooked crosses. Wewelsburg was also the site of a concentration camp, where nearly 4,000 prisoners were forced to work. Despite the grand plans, the SS leadership only gathered there once in 1941. Work stopped after the German defeat at Stalingrad, and as US forces approached in 1945, Himmler ordered its destruction. SS troops partially blew up sections, but most of the castle survived. Wewelsburg reopened in 1950 as a museum and youth hostel. The Werwolf Headquarters was a secret Eastern Front military site in a Ukrainian pine forest used by Hitler between 1942 and 3. Built by Soviet prisoners of war under Organisation Tod, Hitler ordered their execution upon completion to prevent leaks. The site consisted of a log cabin village around a private courtyard, including a concrete bunker for Hitler, 20 cottages, barracks, and 3 smaller bunkers. It was heavily fortified with anti-aircraft guns, tanks, minefields, an anti-tank ditch, and was guarded by the heavily armed Führerbegleitbrigade. The ferro-concrete bunkers included anti-gas chambers to prevent attacks via ventilation, and the headquarters was connected to Germany by rail and air. Werwolf had extensive facilities such as a tea house, sauna, bathhouse, cinema, barbershop, swimming pool, and a large vegetable garden supplying Hitler's meals, all under strict security and chemical analysis due to his fear of poisoning. After the Nazis abandoned the site, they destroyed the underground complex. Today, only fragments and the swimming pool remain. The Jonastal Valley complex in Thuringia, Germany, was a military construction site during the final years of World War II. Thousands of Buchenwald concentration camp prisoners under SS General Hans Kammler were forced to dig 25 tunnels into the surrounding mountains. The operation was carried out under extreme secrecy and was never completed before the war ended. The exact purpose of Jonastal remains unclear. Theories range from a final headquarters for Hitler, a military communications post, to a center for secret weapons research. There are also claims that electromagnetic and nuclear technology experiments took place here. American troops captured Ohrdruf, its forced labor camp, and the nearby Jonastal Valley in April 1945. Following the war, the Soviets took over the site and classified it as restricted. After the fall of the Berlin Wall, the German armed forces assumed control, and Jonastal remains an active military area with entry strictly prohibited. Nussbaum was a secret German weather station established on the Svalbard archipelago in Norway during World War II, set up in September 1944 as part of Operation Haudegen. The station was part of a broader German effort to control Arctic meteorological data, which was vital for military planning. Located on the western edge of Spitsbergen, its structures were built to blend into the snow-covered landscape. Some accounts describe Nussbaum not only as a forecasting post, but also as an experimental installation tied to attempts at influencing weather conditions. On May 8, 1945, the crew received news of Germany's surrender, after which all radio contact was lost. Cut off from the outside world, they were unable to request help until August. In September 1945, a Norwegian seal hunting vessel retrieved them, making the Haudegen group the last German soldiers to formally surrender after the war. La Coupole, or Bauvorhaben 21, was a massive rocket launch base built in northern France in 1943. Its most striking feature was an enormous concrete dome built over tunnels containing storage, launch areas, and living quarters. The site was designed to launch V-2 rockets on an industrial scale, with plans for dozens of daily strikes against London and southern England. The location was supported by railway lines for transporting rockets, fuel, and supplies. Allied bombing during Operation Crossbow repeatedly struck the facility, preventing it from becoming operational. In September 1944, the Allies captured and demolished parts of it on Churchill's orders. Today, La Coupole is a museum. The Colossus of Prora is a massive building complex tucked away on the island of Rügen in Binz, Germany, constructed between 1936 and 39 as part of the Strength Through Joy program. Stretching 4.5 kilometers along the beach, it consists of 8 identical buildings with 10,000 rooms. By 1938, construction costs had reached the equivalent of over 1 billion euro. Prora was designed as an affordable, all-inclusive resort for ordinary German workers, featuring swimming pools and theaters at 20 Reichsmark per week, which is super cheap. Hitler envisioned an even larger complex with 20,000 beds, a massive central hall for speeches, and the ability to convert the resort into a military hospital in wartime. But the resort served primarily as a propaganda symbol of Nazi strength. With the outbreak of World War II, construction ceased and workers were reassigned to the V-Weapons facility at Peenemünde. During the war, Prora was repurposed as a hospital and later a German refugee camp. After the war, the site was used by the Soviet Army, the East German Volksarmee and the Stasi, who removed it from maps. Today, it serves as a hotel. If completed, it would have been the largest holiday resort in the world. Hohlgangsanlage 8, or the Jersey War Tunnels, is a complex in St. Lawrence, Jersey, built by German forces during the occupation of the British Channel Islands. Constructed after Hitler's October 1941 order to fortify the islands as part of the Atlantic Wall, it was dug using slave labor. Over 1 kilometer of tunnels was eventually excavated, intended to serve as protected storage and infantry shelter against Allied bombardment. By late 1943, with Allied invasion looming, the tunnels were repurposed into a casualty clearing station and underground hospital. The facility was fitted with 500 patient beds, heating, air conditioning and gas-proof doors. Unfinished sections were sealed off and the fortifications were never used in combat. When German forces on the islands surrendered in May 1945, the complex was abandoned and British soldiers stripped it of its equipment. Today, it's a tourist site. The Eagle's Nest, or Kehlsteinhaus, is perched atop the Kehlstein mountain above Obersalzberg in Bavaria. Built in 1938 under Martin Bormann, it cost the equivalent of $250 million today and served as a Nazi party retreat for political and social functions, sometimes described as a headquarters, but Hitler rarely used it. The structure was a propaganda showcase, projecting Nazi powers to impress visitors and allies. A road blasted through the mountain leads to a marble-lined tunnel and a golden brass elevator, decorated with Venetian mirrors and green leather, leading to the summit. The main hall features a red marble fireplace gifted by Mussolini, later chipped apart by Allied soldiers for souvenirs. The Eagle's Nest hosted Eva Braun's sister Gretel's wedding. In April 1945, it was targeted in the bombing of Obersalzberg, but the building wasn't hit. Today, the Kehlsteinhaus survives as a restaurant and beer garden. The looted art vaults. The Nazis hid enormous caches of stolen art, gold and artifacts in underground vaults across Europe to shield them from bombing. The Althaussee salt mine in Austria became the largest repository, holding more than 6,500 paintings, furniture and coins. Much of this was intended for Hitler's planned Führermuseum in Linz. The Merkas salt mine in Thuringia contained over 400 million Reichsmark in Nazi gold, now worth over $2 billion, and thousands of artworks, many moved from Berlin's museums. At the Siegen copper mine, the Nazis stored relics of Charlemagne. Neuschwanstein Castle in Bavaria held more than 20,000 artworks looted from Parisian Jews. These hidden vaults became some of the most significant Allied discoveries.